Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting with the Virtual Tasting Society. My name is Vadim Perlovsky, and today we are excited to welcome a brand that has been talked about and hush hush and secret. When are they coming to California? Penelope Bourbon. We have an extensive lineup of 6 expressions. It took a village to put it together, but we are excited to try them. And joining us from Penelope is are you national, global? Matt, you're
National
National
brand
Brand
ambassador.
Ambassador for Penelope Bourbon, Matt Ward. Thank you so much for being here. We're excited to have you.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to be here. So I'm looking forward to this.
As I look around at our lovely guests, I think everyone has been here before, so I don't need to go over etiquette and everything. Everybody knows what to do. Get nerdy, ask questions, participate. That's what we're here for. Enjoy the tasting. We have 6 expressions. Matt, do you want to read off what order you want to go in for these expressions? A lot of our members have 6 glasses in front of us, so we may pre-pour.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, of course. Yeah. So we're going to start with this bottle here. This is our straight. It'll be the 80 proof straight bourbon. So this will be our first pour grain that we'll talk on tonight. One of the things we're going to do is we are going to kind of levitate through proofs, and part of what I'm here to do is kind of like educate you guys a little bit on who is Penelope Bourbon, right? So we are going to kind of graduate through some proofs as we go, and I've sectioned this into the traditional 4-grain products, and then we'll talk about finishing or secondary barreling. So we'll move through into some French oak, through the toasted, and they're actually going to finish with our cask finish series. So that will be our what we call LTOs or limited time offerings, but those will be our cask wine finished products. So that's kind of the order that we're going to go in. But just to give everyone kind of context, this will be our second bottle, which will be the barrel strength. We're going to talk about that one on the second pour. Okay. So it'll be the barrel strength will be number 2. Number 3, we'll start off kind of the finished or secondary barreling will be the architect. So this will be our number 3. This is a French oak staved finish product, so we're going to go into depth about how this product came about and all of the cool things about that. Then we are going to move to toasted. So I actually have the slightly older label here. This is our previous generation. We've just moved that across to our H bottle, but I'll talk about toasted. And then we'll move to actually the newest expression cask wine finish that came out. This is the Valencia, so we'll do this one as the 5th pour. I think we'll be 5 in at that point, which is great. So we'll talk about that guy. And then the last but not least, and I've kept this one to the very last because this one here is the Tokai or Tokaji. We're still not too sure which is the proper pronunciation, but we'll go with Tokaji. I believe that is the phonetic spelling of this. Or actually, as it translates to rotten grape, actually. It's a Hungarian sweet wine barrel that we've used for this. The reason I'm keeping this one to last is this is actually our first rye finished bourbon that we came out with. So we're going to keep the rye to the very end. It's a 95.5. So we'll do this guy right at the end.
I heard you did have one Tokai finished bourbon, but that's long gone, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, we're very lucky to be able to taste that the Tokai finished rye. Thank you, David Pulley, for hooking everybody up with that bottle.
That's amazing. Thank you. Yeah, love that.
Awesome. So yeah, we're excited. Thank you so much. I know some of these are a little higher proof, maybe cask strength. Should we pre-pour or should we just pour as we go?
You're welcome to do either. I would probably suggest pre-pouring them. They'll breathe out a little bit for a few minutes. One of the things that, to your point, we are going to go through some different proofs. So one of the key things I always say in a virtual tasting is that I'm not here to teach you how to drink your bourbon. I'm very much here to educate you on what we do in terms of blending. So if you feel the need to put a little water, put some ice with it, mix it if you want. I mean, you drink your bourbon the way you want to drink it and enjoy it. So we are going to have some cask strength. So a couple of the products are going to be a little bit over the 110s into 113 proofs. So they're going to hug and kiss you, I guess is the best way I can put it, as we enjoy it.
I
So
noticed your cast strength doesn't go very high. No hazmats, nothing over 60%, right? It seems like everything's like mid 50s at the highest.
yeah, we typically the highest barrel strength that we've produced has been 117 proof.
Okay.
Um, One of the interesting points there, and it's a good thing to bring up actually, is that our barrel stock is getting a little older as it goes along. You are going to get a little bit of proof loss over age. And we are blending. So we are blending some source barrels. So I'll probably start with a little bit of the history of Penelope first, and then we'll get to the meat of how we actually put all this together. So Penelope actually, from a market perspective of being sold, started in 2019, but the actual story goes back into 2018. And I think the best way to start this is, who is Penelope? So Penelope is a beautiful 4-year-old girl. And that is Mike Palladini, the founder of Penelope's daughter. Him and his wife, Carrie, had their first child. And Mike really wanted to celebrate the birth of his first daughter, but also build a legacy. This was really important to him and his family. Mike comes from actually a very entrepreneurial background. He's actually from the technology space, but he actually worked with his family in the mattress business as well. So he's been involved in a lot of business, and he teamed up with co-founder Danny Pelosi. So Danny actually is our master blender. And their journey actually goes back to 4th grade. So they've known each other from school. They've been neighbors and friends for a very long time. So yeah, both the guys got together, and the story is very humbling because this is a bootstrap business. It's a family business actually, and there are no outside investors. Even today, we have no outside investment. So this was built from the ground up. And I think, if you look back, how do you start a bourbon company? Well, you can go one of two routes. You can spend millions and build a distillery, or you can source. And the guys went down the sourcing route. So our principal source is from MGP in Indiana. That's where our bourbons come from. And so the really cool part of the story is, Mike and Danny are not traditionally from the liquor business either. Mike was in technology side. Danny comes from the engineering background. He actually had a restaurant in Manhattan. So they cold called MGP back in 2018 and looking to buy some barrels. Now, to give you the context of cold calling MGP, they got a meeting. But at that time, they were still trying to figure out DSPs, labels, bottles, all the good things that you need to to create a company, right? But the first pour that you'll actually try tonight, which is the straight bourbon, or 80 proof, is the original blend, and it actually still today is that exact blend they first created at MGP. So we actually the business actually bought 6 barrels to start with. And they cold called MGP, asking for several thousand barrels. But, they wanted to dip the toe in the water and, take a few barrels. But what was really cool, Mike and Danny, they ground this out from the start. I mean, they were hand selling the product in New Jersey from the back of their car. And Danny will tell this story where, one of the first customers was at Newark Airport, and he's on the tarmac at like 4 a.m. delivering bourbon from his car. But it was really humble beginnings. The guys structured this, smartly from the beginning. The really cool thing about this is that, including myself and actually everybody at the distillery, is that we're drinkers. We're consumers by heart. So they, Maker's Mark, traditional pours. There was nothing too fancy about kind of where they came from and what they were drinking. And that's kind of the principle that the company goes by. And kind of our tagline is everybody's bourbon. And that's what they tried to create, was something that was accessible for everybody, but at a price point where people could actually enjoy picking up a bottle. And repeat picking up a bottle, because we'll talk tonight about some of these pours and how we went about, like Toasted, for example. Toasted, you know, we've all been there. We've been trying to find certain bottles on the marketplace, and they're either very highly allocated or very expensive. So I'll talk to some of the principles about how we actually went about mass market on things like Toasted, because it's kind of an interesting kind of accolade to this whole story of really pick the bottle up, crack it with your friends, and enjoy it. And that's kind of what we live by in the distillery per se. So yeah, the business started, you know, we're in New Jersey, so that's where home base is. It's Roselle, New Jersey, which is of course the epicenter of bourbon production for the world. That's what we like to think of it as. But no, we're about 5 to 8 minutes from Newark Airport, to give you a context of where we're at in New Jersey. The business actually started in a 3,000 square foot facility, and we still have that 3,000 square foot facility today. We're about 16 people in total. That's it. So to give you the kind of scale of where one state has come to 2022, we're a little over 33 states, going to 35. We're still a team of about 16 people. We have obviously some extended teams that help us out in the field. We still have our original 3,000 square foot facility. So the question is, you know, how do you build this and scale it? So sourcing was the predominant route here for Penelope. We're an NPD, non-producing distiller. We're blenders by what we love to do. We're very transparent about that. So tonight, feel free to ask any question. We live by the transparency of what we do, and being honest to the product that we put on the street. So please ask away. We've got the chat open, and I'll keep an eye on it as well. So yeah, 6 barrels became 12, became 24, and then we've grown. So the source is interesting, and I'll give you kind of the whole journey of how we've scaled the production and the business. This is 3 bourbons in one. So effectively, what comes from MGP is a 99 corn source barrel. Think of these as the ingredient barrels, like we're baking a cake. We're gonna take some ingredients together. There's a 21% rye bourbon from MGP, and a 45 wheat bourbon from MGP. Each of those products has a little bit of malted barley in all of them. So that's kind of our 4th grain, and that's where it comes from. Often when I do these tastings in a live setting, in person, you can see everyone's like mind going to do math. It's like, well, hang on, you talked about 3 barrels, but you're talking about 4 grains. Where's all that coming from? But in this concept, the malted barley is omnipresent between the 3 ingredient barrels. So what's nice about predominantly everything but the Tokai, and it's kind of the little bit of our blending magic, is we blend all of our bourbons to pretty much a consistent mash bill. So when we take those 3 core barrels, you're pretty much coming out with a high corn product. It's usually a little over 70%. Obviously, maintain those rules of bourbon, you've got to be over 51. But our kind of core end product, when we pull those 3 ingredient barrels to do, is going to be a little over 70%, and it will vary a little bit. I'll explain that as we go along. Equal parts of wheat and rye, and about 4% malted barley. So that's kind of where we come from. What's really interesting is that these expressions you're going on tonight are roughly that same construct, but it's how you finish, it's how you rebarrel, and it's how you present cast strength products. And that's kind of the beauty of how you can take that same set of core products, blend them, and then put them into different formats that people can enjoy. From an age perspective, so on this first pour, and by the way, we should do a traditional cheers. So the cheers to everyone. The 4 grain. So this is actually our original 4 grain that we created. We actually blend this to be a very consistent profile time and time again. It is 80 proof. So it was originally targeted for the Basil Hayden market. That's actually where the guys started this whole business. They wanted to go after the Basil Hayden area. And the reason this still, in fact, by the way, this product is actually one of our top selling products still today in the country. It's designed to be a very simple sipper. So from a nose perspective, you are going to get some nice bit of nose up there, but you do get this beautiful citrus note, and it's really kind of if you haven't had a true 4-grain before, it's kind of a nice way to start because you're at a bit of a lower proof, but you're actually going to see the different grains interact and how we blended this. So from a nose perspective, you're going to get some sweet notes up there. From a taste perspective, and everyone's palate's going to be a little bit different, but I do get green apple notes. I get some citrus in here, but there's just about enough oak and heat in here to keep it interesting. You know, we consider this pretty viscous for its age. You're actually drinking a 2 to 3 year blended bourbon. So it's got some nice viscosity for its age. But this is a 2 to 3 years straight. And that's how we blend this together. So I'd love to hear the feedback. I know you've done a lot of these different virtual tastings. So it's always good to hear about what do you think about all the different products as we go through. But yes, cheers to everybody. Now, there's some really cool things you can do with this bottle, and we call it our versatile bottle for a couple of reasons. And I get that lovely little bit of heat on the back palate. So for the summer, I actually put strawberry lemonade with this 4-grain. And strawberry lemonade does something quite interesting because it's a very harsh citrus that can be in the lemonade, a little bit of obviously the lemon, but it actually mixes with this 4-grain very well. It balances out. I actually deem this, I called this the adult sippy cup. It's one of the best adult sippy cups you're going to have in your life. It's a great late pour, but you can get a little bit more sophisticated with this bottle too. So old fashions, Manhattans, it does cocktailing very well. That proof maintains itself really, really well within the within cocktail making. So kind of the essence of the company, they originally created an 80 proof 4-grain that really you could pick up at a reasonable price. You could share it at a table setting, and people could do a lot of different things with it. So you can put mixers with it, you can put water on it for simple sipping. The interesting thing about all of our products is that they're non-chill filtered. Now, there's a kind of a reason for that. It's money. You know, when you're starting out from scratch, I mean, a chill filtering plant is a lot of money and it's a lot of water. And the guys decided that we'll go with a chill filtered, and actually that's being maintained all the way through our products. So, you know, that's the mode that we went with that particular one for there. All right, so some of it is good for an 80 proof, but I need a little bit more proof. Well, don't worry, we're going to get there. It's the next pour for different reasons. So that's awesome. So yeah, that's kind of like the start of the journey here is on this 80 proof. So everyone enjoying it so far? All right.
This is incredibly easy to drink. It's so good.
It is. And you still got a little bit of the oak in there. You know, but it's not crushing the side palate too much. But the citrus pops in there, I kind of like, and it sits with you for a little bit too. So it does have a little bit of a longer finish. The great thing about this product is we blend it always to the same methodology. So it's a very consistent bottle for anybody picking this up. And typically, depending on where you live, it'll sit within the $34, $35, $36 range to give you an idea. So that is our white label. So the next one we'll talk about here is cask strength, barrel strength. We call it barrel strength. Very interchangeable terms in the marketplace from a marketing perspective, but we call ours barrel strength. It can be also deemed cask strength. Now the red label bottle. This is what it actually looks like on the shelf. So you have this beautiful etched glass. And this is kind of really cool. So we etch all of this glass for these bottles. This in the industry is known as the bikini label, the itsy witsy bikini label. So this is our bikini label on the bottles. So barrel strength is actually blended per batch. We typically do right now about 3 of these blends a year. And how this works is we'll take down a number of the source barrels, those ingredient barrels, the 99 corn, 21 rye, 45 wheat, from their lots, and we'll pull those from MGP. And that's, once we've pulled it, that's what we're working with. So that actually assessing when we're going to blend those three barrel types together, that's going to create this red bottle at the barrel strength. So we're not adding any water. Obviously, with the 80 proof, we are proofing it down, but this is straight from the barrels. It's simply blended and bottled. Our process is Danny's process for this. He will create typically 12 to 14 different samples. And to give you kind of an insight to those samples, you know, 0.25% in any one of those ingredient barrel differences will change a barrel strength construct here in this red barrel strength bottle immensely. The whole profile will change. So it's a very delicate balance between the corn, the wheat, and the rye. And actually, we have a little bit of fun with this. So depending on the time of year, we will actually tweak the percentages a little bit. Now, when I say a little bit, it can be sometimes 0.25% or even less, but it can have a kind of an interesting impact. So, you know, the corn is obviously giving us our sweetness. It's like where our citrus notes come from. And one of the really nice things about these barrel strengths for me personally is that I get a lot of berry notes up front. And I kind of like that. We often sometimes get a lot of dark, like the strawberries. There's some red currant notes up front. Sometimes there's even black currant up front. So it's very citrus forward, but very berry forward. We've done batches of this particular product where it's very chocolate heavy. So you get dark and milk chocolate in the mid palate. One thing that this particular pour will not ever disappoint in is the hug and kiss at the back. So you're going to get that sort of nice white and black pepper notes, sometimes shorter and longer finishes. And that's really all to do with those source barrels. We have to blend to those. So, you know, Danny will go through 12 to 14 samples. He will merge those down with his team to typically 4. And then the wider team, we'll actually all get together and we'll go through those 4. Now, what's interesting about this is that this product's evolving batch over batch, and the barrels are getting a little older as well. So there's, you know, some of the proofs have come down a little bit. But what's interesting is our palates are kind of over time really knowing what this barrel strength profile is. It's getting tuned in every time that we do this. So we have played around with this in the seasons. So there was a batch 8. So we're on currently, just so you know, we're actually just about to release batch 14 of this barrel strength product. So, but we've done some batches. There was a batch 8 where we actually amped the rye a little bit. And what that did is it gave it an immense winter pour because you were getting a lot of the sort of rye spices. There was a lot of white and black pepper in there on the backside of an extremely long finish. But in the sort of spring and summer months, which was some of the batches that we did this year, we actually amped in the wheat, dialed back a little bit of the rye, and it became sort of that more chocolate note, a little bit more berry forward. And one of the key things with this barrel strength is you have to balance it. And the art of blending, right? We were very lucky this year. Fred Minnick's Ascot Awards actually awarded us Blender of the Year, which is pretty impressive for about 3.5, 4 years in. We're pretty proud of it. And I think this barrel strength product is really kind of an epitaph to where the blending is going, because we've really been able to dial in exactly what this profile and this barrel strength needs to be for the different seasons, but also the drinkability of it. So when we were taste testing, and we obviously taste test, you know, lots of different brands out there as well, you don't want your barrel strength to be, oh, that's a barrel strength. And then you're like, I got to do something with this. You know, still for some people, this could be a little higher in the proofs. And I think this particular one, I'm actually drinking, just so you know, batch 8. I like the spice. I'm a spice guy and heat guy on the back. This particular one I'm on here is 115.8. But what we often find with a lot of the barrel strengths is they don't actually drink their proof anywhere close. And that's kind of gives that barrel strength a little bit more accessibility. That's one of the profiles that we kind of go for, is you're still getting your proof, but it's kind of not biting you in the face and then ripping it off. It's kind of letting you gently into that sort of journey and giving the overall experience. So I'll do a little taste test on my 8. I'm not sure which one we sent you. I think it might have been 11 or 12, but it'll be in that range that we sent out. That one will have a lot of chocolate, hopefully a lot of chocolate notes in it. That's what I remember from those batches. So as a team, we get together on those 4. Give you an idea, it typically takes us about 2 hours. There's a lot of debate, and we get down to 2 usually. And it's getting harder, I'll be honest. We're on calls and usually 4, 5, 6 minutes, sometimes up to eight folks in the team. And the last one we did just 14. It was torn. We were very torn between the 2. So, and we don't have the we're still a small producer, so we don't really have the opportunity to go with both. We have to put our finger down on one. And I tell you, it's a pretty humbling experience, like when you've completed the blend, because there's usually a period of somewhere around 2 weeks before it goes to bottling, and then pretty much another 2 weeks after that before we receive the product. So you're in that sort of month cycle of waiting to see what happens. And one of the interesting things that we have to watch ourselves on is the drinkability of the physical tank samples that we're going on. So we have to take into account that between the samples we're getting, obviously the tanking, there's a little bit of oxidation that's going to go on during the tank to the bottling process. We have to watch our own palates when we go through these, because we can have some samples that have amazing noses on them. And equally, you can have samples that are a little bit over, what we call overnose. So there's a little bit too much going on, a little bit more ethanol going on. We have to watch that, because if generally everything is so perfect in the glass, we have to watch that by the time it gets to the bottle, we haven't lost anything. So it's a very delicate process when you've got all these samples to go through, because time of day is really important as well. So we'll go through these often at different times of the day as well. And we found that, a lot of late nights are actually pretty good, because the day's gone on. You have to watch what you eat during the day as well, because you don't want to affect too much of the choice. Because when you've sampled these barrel strengths and you've gone for it, to give you an idea, this is a 8 to 10,000 case run. So, and these 6-pack cases. So you've got to really know where you're going to be at the end of the day. So Danny and the team have, that they're homing in this skill, and it's pretty impressive to watch over the period I've been here. And we're having a lot of fun with that. So cheers to the barrel strength. I'm gonna have a little of the 8 over here. Cheers to you all. But yeah, let me know what you all think.
You said that the bourbon, the flagship, is blended to a flavor profile. The cask strength is blended also to be the same batch after batch, or is it more like this is the best?
It'll be the best of the source barrels that we've pulled down for the use in that blend. That's why we do so many samples, and we'll get down to effectively 2.
Do the ages stay consistent as well between the batches?
Yeah, we typically try to pick 4, 5, and 6 year for this barrel strength product. Obviously, the first one we're on was 2 and 3. It's a little bit younger, and obviously, it's younger because it's at a price point, but we don't want to ever sacrifice price point for taste and quality. That's really important for us, and that's the same in the barrel strength. Like, we're not going to release something that the team's not behind. That's why we all get together and discuss them, because we've always said internally and even externally, it's really important that we're humbled by the fact that someone's going to walk into a store and spend anywhere from $65 to $70 on this barrel strength. And at the end of the day, it's got to be right. It's people's hard-earned money that goes to buy these bottles that keeps us going. So yeah, we're very conscious of that every time that we do these releases. So we're typically doing about 2 to 3 of these a year. Yeah, we just hit 14. We did skip 13. We don't know what will happen with 13. We may do something cool with it. Maybe. We're not sure yet. But yeah, we're going on to 14, 15, and 16 this year. So it'll be a lot of fun. Do you all like it?
You said the barrel strength year 15, 16, because I think you said our sample is 18, no?
Your sample is probably a batch 11 and 12. Those
Okay,
were
then
about
it's 12.
time.
Yeah, I'm looking at the side of the bottle right now. It's probably 12 then. Okay.
Yeah, it'll be a 12. Yeah, so we've just bottled 14. That's about to start going out to our distributors and our retailers. And then 15, 16 will be planned for next year. So it'll be a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a fun product. Yeah, I mean, often like when I'm drinking it, I will drink it neat, but some days I'll just put a little bit of ice with it, and it'll change the construct a little bit too. You'll start to get some deeper flavors, a lot more berry notes that will come out of it, and chocolate notes. It's really cool. So it's fun.
I gotta say, both of them so far very drinkable, but still interesting. You know, sometimes something's drinkable and it's sort of boring. The first one, although
That's awesome.
I would like a little bit more heft on the first one, but it still is interesting in the palate. And I felt spice on it had a long finish, like you said. And this one definitely drinks below its proof. Very easy to drink, but was good. I mean, I've had a lot of your other stuff, but that was it's interesting to sort of do it like this in this way, which I haven't really done. Sort of sat with the bottles and drank them, but
that's awesome.
Very, very good.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, they do drink under their proof. It's honestly not. I'd love to say like it's hugely by design, but I think it's also kind of the construct of how the three source barrels are coming together. Typically happen a little bit with the corn, you know, it's dominating a little bit, so I think that's kind of tricking everything here. I don't say tricking, but it's kind of giving your senses a little bit more of that easier citrus note to deal with, and then giving you a little bit more of the heat and the rye on the back end. So yeah, we have a lot of fun with this particular product. It's not going anywhere either. So, and there's honestly, there's not too many folks that do a straight up barrel strength anymore. It seems to be the proof is coming down quite a bit these days. So, and bottle sizes as well. I've seen that starting to happen as well. So, yeah, but typically on the street, you'll see that somewhere in the 60s. Some markets a little bit less and some markets a little bit more. So we don't control that, I'm afraid, guys. We sell to distributors, and everything else is at their hands at that point. So the next one we're going to move on to is really interesting. So August of last year, Danny, we use different cooperages, and that's where I have to kind of start with the sort of finished and rebarreled discussion that we're going to get into. So we're just going to talk about Architect and Toasted. So about August of last year, one of the cooperages we work with, they own Tonnin Rideau in France, and that is a traditional French oak cooperage that has started to actually experiment with, and I say experiment, but actually produce and use different methodologies to create staves. So this is a stave finished bourbon that we're going to move on to, the Architect. And it sits consistently at 104, and I'll talk a bit about how we got to this 104. It's kind of interesting. So we got these stave samples. Now, these stave samples, to give you an idea, they're very long, thin strips of wood. They're toasted, so there's no char on them, but they are toasted. And it's French oak. Give you an idea, there's typically around 42 different varietals of French oak. So we get like a book. And it's honestly like going to Sherwin-Williams for paint, but you get it for wood. You get this sample of wood, and you go through. And obviously, being French, they like to call all their staves like really cool French names, like intense and complex and delicate. So they gave each of these different stave types a different name. But simply put, it's a type of French oak, and then there's a level of toast that has been done on those these staves. The really interesting thing about this is that they're very consistent. And what I mean by this is that we can effectively, we'll take the staves are, 1 to 2 feet long, pretty thin. we can take a very small percentage of those staves that come to us, maybe about 1/4 inch, and we can actually drop it into a 750 bottle and let it sit there for about 45 days. The small piece of French oak that sits in that bottle will obviously impart flavor over that 45-day in that 750 ml bottle. When you extract that and taste on it, when you come up to 1,000-gallon tank and put in 200 of those staves, your consistency and your flavor profile is very much the same. So from an R&D perspective, this gives you kind of this sort of Willy Wonka chocolate box factory of things that you can do, because you can actually run multiple samples consistently at the same time. So you can run different stave types in different blends. We've actually started to play around with this a little bit. So some of the Architect product that's out there is our true 4-grain. Some of it's not. Some of it's actually a 21 rye bourbon, and it's got staves that have been added to it. So this product's actually kind of cool, because the backstory on the Architect and how this came about, where some of our R&D, I guess marketing R&D, how we actually come up with these names conceptually actually usually happens between like 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. in the morning. And that's typically when like the core of us can get together and really talk about what we are going to do next. And Danny brings on one call on one night, hey, I've been playing around with the French oak staves I got. Now these staves, they do an infrared scan on them, so they're very consistent on the amount of toast level that's on them. So that's how we get the consistency over putting like 200 of them into an overall tank. So it's about 1,000-gallon tank with the blend in it. They'll sit in there for 45 days. So Danny sent everyone samples, and we're on this call. We're just chatting on the phone. And to give you an idea, we've got product in a tank. Yet you've got to do a label. You got to get the label approved. You got to get printed. You got to get bottled. There's a whole process that will go on to get the product out the door. And timeframes can be compressed, and especially like during the pandemic, and even now post-pandemic, supply chain is kind of interesting. You've really got to be in tune with all these moving components: glass, cap, labels, people, bottling facilities. So we're on this call, and we're thinking about the French oak. We're thinking about the concept behind it. And Danny's concept for this, as you drink it, was kind of interesting. He wanted the kind of pour to feel like you were in a winery drinking whiskey. And I think he kind of nailed it, because what I find with this pour is it induces a couple of little experiences, because at the front, the Architect has kind of a creamy outlook, but then it pops this kind of really cool dry note. And if you've had like some really good Cabernet Sauvignon, you get that nice dryness in the palate. That's kind of there, but it doesn't stay with you for the whole time. It kind of lets the creaminess come back in. It's just so drinkable at the 104. So this was actually originally proofed about 90 all the way through 110. So we actually did proof samples at every proof point all the way down. And we actually got down to 2, 104 and 107. Well, guess what? We didn't choose 107 for a simple reason, because that gets judged in a whole different category per se. But yeah, 104 has been a really interesting point for this, because the first build, and we call them builds, being architecture, build 1 was an interesting learning curve, because we hadn't done a finished bourbon of this magnitude, especially using French oak. And we learned very quickly that you could push the boundaries of this a little bit further each time. So that's what's happened through like build 1, 2, 3, and 4. We've experimented with different stave types. So we've used, light, medium, and heavy combinations of those together. The latest one, that's batch 4 that's coming out, will be a complex stave, so it'll be a higher toast on it. It'll actually be a 21 rye bourbon that we're going to use in that particular blend. So the Architect name, coming back to that story, we're on this call, and Danny's been talking about how this construct and this process is going to go together. It's a 45-day finish, by the way, on this product. And he was talking about kind of the few things of sustainability in this product. It's kind of a future blueprint for us a little bit, and I'll talk more about that in a second. And me and Mike were like thinking about, well, we got the foundation of our company, how it grew, the walls, kind of how the staves create kind of the roof. And it's funny just how these concepts pop into your mind at 2 a.m. in the morning. I said, hey, it sounds like architecture. Why don't we call it the architect? And part of the reason why that came in my brain is that my dad was an architect for his whole career. So it was kind of nice, it was a little bit of a nod that we got to put for my dad in there. But actually, it kind of felt right within the theme of how Penelope has become, because, Mike's daughter's name is on this bottle. So you've really got to put a standout product. So you're putting your family, you're putting your family right on this bottle, right? Interestingly, the finishing series that will go on to the cast wine finish series, the bottom of the bottle says Cooper's series. That's Danny's son. So it's been really cool that a lot of the different family elements are starting to be represented in all of these different bottles. So it's really cool. So the architect itself, as I said, it's a 45-day finish. It's tank finished, 1,000-gallon tank. We're putting somewhere between 200, 220 staves in there. It's like dropping a wooded keychain into a tank. You want to cover as much of the surface area of the tank for as long as possible. The staves fully extract. There's nothing left after 45 days, and you'd be pretty impressed. Like the staves do hold quite a lot of the juice afterwards too. So we have to actually account for that. We're obviously trying to maximize the amount of cases that we can produce and put out there. So that actually has to go into the calculation as well when we produce this. But it's been a really cool product to play around with. It. You could do so many different variations of this. Right now, for like next year, we're definitely sticking for the most part with the French oak, but down the line, the whole point of the architect was, you could use different staves, and there's a lot of different stave types out there. You can use American oak, Brazilian Umbriana, you can go different parts of the world. And that's actually really interesting to us because there's a lot of different flavor profiles that you can actually, in a finished bourbon, bring into the play. The really important thing for us is a finished bourbon should be a finished bourbon to us. So you should have the bourbon experience that you want, but also that very gentle finish. It should never overpower what the original source blends were going to be. So it's a very delicate balancing act for us. But I love this product, especially if you've got someone that that loves red wine. I think they'd really dig on this particular bourbon and really enjoy it. So cheers to everybody on that particular pour, but hopefully that's kind of a little background on how that little kitty came about. So I'm actually going to pour myself a little bit of this, actually.
A couple of us went to Louisville in September, drank a couple places, and I had this at a festival, the architect, and it was one of my top 3 pours of the 6 days we were there, I got to say, because to me, there's stuff that's really good and the stuff that's really interesting. And if you're lucky, something that's both. And to me, this, and this is both very interesting, very good. I also didn't realize until that trip how much I love French oak. And the vanilla I get in the middle of it is just spot on with that sort of drying tannin from the wood, like you're eating a walnut. The combination of the two, I just really, really, really dig.
Yeah, we had to play around with this a bit, and I agree with you on that. Actually, the first batch was probably a little bit. There was a little bit additional tannin in it. And we did go back to the stave provider and give them some feedback on that, and they kind of tweaked how they were doing the toasting of the chars for us on that. And it kind of just helped balance out the sort of the tannic nature of it. It's a polarizing pour. I will put it that way. I think if you like oak, you like oak. and if you don't, it's maybe a little odd. But one of the things I will say about that particular bottle is, if you do get a full bottle, give it time to oxidize a little bit, especially when you're drinking through it. About halfway through, that bottle will completely change its appearance in both the profile, but also the nosing. It actually really starts to open up a lot. So it's kind of like this Jekyll and Hyde that's going on. It's kind of cool, and yeah, you're definitely getting a taste experience. I will tell you that. So that's pretty neat. Yeah, I love the nose on this. It envelops you with just the notion of, if you've gone to a winery or even a brewery, actually, you're still getting the grain note, but there's just enough of that oak to kind of tempt you in a little bit. Yeah, see, I love that little dry pop that comes in there, and that creaminess comes back. Yeah, and there's some nice black pepper in this too. Again, for me personally, on my palate, nothing too overpowering. We are at the 104, so we have proofed it a little bit. We have a barrel program for retailers. So there are actually architect private barrels out there now, and actually some of those do sit at cask strength. So there are some slightly higher proof versions of this out there. Now, what's interesting about the retail store barrel selections that we've done, the build bottles 1, 2, 3, 4 that are out there on the regular shelf, that is, it's a big combination of blends, different types that we've done. What we do in the private barrel series is that we actually take our sourced ingredient barrels and put the staves into them. So we take some 99 corns, we put 20 staves in some of those. We took 21 rye bourbons, put some staves in those, and we even did it on the wheat side as well. So we've actually created a single barrel format of this architect, but using the staves and the ingredient barrels, which has been a lot of fun. And it's actually something we're going to continue doing with some other projects that we've got up our sleeve for next year. So it'll be kind of cool. Okay, so we did architect. So now we're going to pop back up to barrel strength. So I'm taking you through proofs and kind of crazy journeys and showing you how kind of we did all this. So toasted. So toasted bottle. Toasted is an interesting concept. It actually, where's the bottle going? Toasted actually comes from this. That is the source. So when we do these barrel strength blends, they're actually the original construct of this toasted pour that you're actually about to drink on. We rebarrel this. So we put this back into brand new oak, toasted and charred. And the funny thing about this is that there's some other providers just won't tell you how they do their toasted products. Well, here's the interesting news. We will. When the project got going, we went to different cooperages. So actually, a lot of our toasted products have been in different barrel types. So we've used Kelvin, we've used Speyside, we've used McGuinness in Missouri, all with different toasts and chars. And the idea about this is that when Mike and Danny sit down with them, themselves, the team, the concept for us is, how do we actually produce this so that you can go and buy it again? And that's always the key fundamental for what we're looking for, is like, what's the process look like? How does that work? And how can you scale it? Now, the architects and toasted are kind of interesting products to scale for a number of reasons. The architect's all about the tank size, the amount of volume, the amount of staves you're going to use, and how many of those you can do a year. Toasted is literally all about how many barrels can you have, how many can you put in the facility, and how long are you actually prepared to wait for? Because guess what? Time is definitely the enemy in the bourbon and whiskey world, right? You got to wait for this stuff to do its thing. So when we were looking at this, when you go back to sort of original neutral grains distillate being dropped into barrels, on average, most folks they'll sit in the middle range for the most part. Char 2s, char 3s, medium and heavy toasts. Even if they're toasting, sometimes they'll just be charring the barrels. So our concept was, well, you know what, if we're going to do this at some scale, we've got to have the ability to move around the char levels and the toast levels. And that's why we went out to the different cooperages to try and get different barrel stocks. So we've done product that's been char 1 through 5, and we've done medium heavies across that whole range. We went state by state to start with. So we actually, to scale this, we actually dropped toasted per state. We made sure there was enough in each of those markets that people could enjoy it. And the early days, we put state names on all of the bottles, and it was kind of a little bit deliberate. So we kind of looked back at sort of like the pre and post prohibition days where, like, you know, the traditional tax state was on that wouldn't leave the state. So we kind of try to mimic that a little bit to really, one, make sure that it was within the state, but two, also to get it on the shelves so that you know, typically it wouldn't sit behind the closed doors in retail. So it was kind of a bit of a strategy that we had. So the toasting and the charring is interesting. You know, char is omnipresent in every barrel that exists, you know, globally that's produced. I mean, it's there as a natural filter for the grain and the spirit. But it imparts a flavor profile. I mean, toasted bottles here, this particular pour is all about the burnt sugars, the marshmallows, the caramels. It's just going to keep coming in bucket loads in this particular pour. And it's a barrel strength as well. Typically, most toasted bottles have had some kind of dilution to them for the most part. So we decided to go all out. We want to give you a flavor bomb, but also give you some barrel strength to go with it. Nice little hug and kiss as it goes down as well. The toasting is it's a secondary process, but you know, it's designed to impart a whole different flavor profile. The actual process itself is very different, obviously, to charring. I mean, charring a barrel 1 through 5 every 15 seconds is the degree of heat that's added to the wood. Toasting is all about how deep within the wood can you start breaking apart some of the molecular and the cellulose within the wood to give you a different flavor profile. When you marry those two together, it's a pretty exceptional product. Time. So these are the kind of elements that play into a toasted product. You've got the barrel, the cooperage, and we don't ever underestimate cooperage. Cooperage plays a huge part in the end product the second barreling of that barrel strength blend. It actually also affects time, the environment, the time of year that you're actually putting this secondary barrel together. So, you know, if we drop these in the winter, it's going to obviously it's going to do its thing a little longer because, you know, the juice isn't moving as fast. In the summer they're cooking and they're moving through that process a little faster. So, you know, we can have a toasted product 60 days, and in some cases, the product that you guys have is up to 6 months. Char on the toast is going to have an effect. Higher the char, higher the toast, is going to be shorter time. And the thing we're looking for in this, when we're tasting these barrels, typically every week, every 2 weeks, you don't want it to fall off and it becomes very tannic. So, you know, a char 1, medium and heavy, is probably going to be the longest in barrel. They can stay there. But you also have to take into consideration cooperage. The cooperage plays into the char and toast level and the time. And when we started building out this program, the results we were getting were very different, actually, between the Speyside and the Kelvins and the McGinnis's. So dependent, and we've really got it down to now, like when we're doing a blend, the char and toast, we kind of know the timescales we're running on, but also the flavor profiles that we want to get from toasted. So it's been a really cool program to be working on. But the cool thing is we managed to scale it and scale it so that people could like literally go back and buy another one, which is the whole point of this. So yeah, so it's kind of a fun product. Cheers to you guys on that one. What I'm going to advise is once we've gone through toasted, maybe take a little sip of water because we are going to go to some slightly delicate pours and have a little chat about these little funsters. I'm going to take a little bit of toasted. Are there any questions as we go along? Because I know I'm just talking, and I want to make sure, like, you guys get all your questions answered as well.
No, there's a ton of activity going on in the chat. People are loving this.
Oh, awesome. Well, I'm glad. Like, yeah, we're actually just fun guys that like to drink, and with girls on the team too, actually. So I should probably mention that. We make sure there's a diverse. We're a diverse business, and that's also down to folks in the field and in our production facilities, people who are tasting. I mean, it's really important to us. You have to have an overall demographic as well. In fact, Jace, who runs our facility, he's 24, but he's phenomenal. Like, he's running a whole facility as a 24-year-old, but maturity of someone who's 30, 40, 50 that's been running an operation. We're super lucky with the folks that we have. And everyone's in the same direction, which is really cool. There's no egos in the business. Everyone's thinking very methodically about how we put this together. We're phenomenally lucky to have amazing partners, and that's one of the things that I was going to tell you about the scale before we go on to the cast finishes. I'm going to let that toasted sit around for a little minute and do its thing.
I noticed the toasted was % higher than the barrel strength. Is that considered a barrel strength as well?
Yeah, we push those at a barrel strength, so we don't proof the toasted product. It's an interesting one because we could proof it, and actually it's been a cool debate actually in the distillery at the moment. So we've done some trials proofing this to 100, and it's amazing how the balance actually, this is very well balanced even at barrel strength, but when we proof it a little bit, it just evens out the outside of the palate pour a little bit, so on the sides of your mouth. It doesn't have so much roughness that you can get with some of the heat. I drink actually toasted a little bit of ice. I like it to come down in that proof level a little bit. So yeah, we've played around with that a little bit. We're also playing around with rye. So we've actually done, and this is all things I'm telling you, like, this is, we're very open about, what we do. We actually have we had some barrel projects. So one of the things that we do in the field, we kind of try products in a sort of, I guess, a very constructed and boxed environment, but instead of keeping it internally, the best people to try stuff that we're thinking of, right, is you guys that buy the bottles. So we actually did a toasted rye. It's 100% rye, and we toasted it, and there's actually been put into a few markets. The feedback has been like really phenomenal on it. The really cool thing about toasted rye at 100%, it just has all the beautiful characteristics of a bourbon, but it's a rye. And it's amazing how just taking a blend and putting it into a secondary barrel, double barrel, if you want to call it that, or a toasted product, how it really can just change the characteristic of the original blend in a good way. So we've been playing around with that a little bit. So yeah, I think you'll see a little toasted rye action in the future is what I should probably say. We do another bottle actually that we don't have in this tasting tonight, and it's actually called Private Select. The best way I can describe Private Select is please pick it up, because those are actually really, really special bottles. So Danny, 2 to 3 times a year, will actually take some of the best casks, best batches of the original source barrels that we've had for the year. We kind of stash a few things away. And he will go into the Willy Wonka chocolate factory, or in fact, it's a room, we push pizza under the door. But he'll come out, and one of the cool things about Private Select is, and a little bit of story behind it, recently there's a batch called 22301 and 302. They're out there. They're across all of the states that we sell into. Me, Mike, and Danny were in an Airbnb in Kentucky, And Danny brings his blending kit with him. He actually blends on the road. He brings it to different places that we travel to. He's always got some samples in the bag, and he's always, wanting to play around. And he brings these samples. We're in Kentucky for it was an event, a barbecue event, actually. Oh, interestingly, we came third, and we were the only non-Kentucky distillery at this barbecue event. So that was kind of fun. But later that night, Danny bought the blending kit, and the concept of Private Select, it's a black label. It looks a little bit like this toasted bottle, but it says Private Select at the bottom. It's all to do with how you can take different variations. So we go a little bit wild on it, actually. We've done 100% corn versions of it. We've dialed back corn out of it. We've done some wheat and rye and malted barley. In fact, we did a 49% malted barley version of our Private Select. It was a great bottle. So this particular 301 and 302 was cool because we're in the Airbnb and Danny's blending up. And we actually got to sit as a team and really home in something that was very special for the year. It actually had an 8-year malted barley in it. So we did 4, 5, 6, and 8 year in those particular releases, which was really cool. But I think it's the experience as a team that we can get down and just in a very relaxed environment, just enjoy everyone's company as if we were home drinking, but actually really envelop and create some really exciting blends. So that's kind of a little bit of the Private Select, but we have fun when we do this. So any questions before I move on to the wine finishes, because those are going to be kind of the little funsters at the end, and they're going to kind of zip and pop around.
Two things. One, I had a question. So you said that the toasted comes from the cask strength. So when you're batching the barrel strength, does that mean there's less of the barrel strength that's going to come out because some of it went in the toasted barrels, or is that separate?
Yeah, so I'll run you through the process. So sauce barrels, the ingredient barrels, tank will create the blend. It'll sit there maybe sometimes, a few days up to a week. We're just going to let that whole blend settle down a little bit. We'll retaste on the blend. And then we're going to put it, portions of that blend go into the different barrel types that we've got for the toasted. And that's our process. In fact, part of the process I haven't kind of explained, and it's something always to look on the back of the bottles, is where we actually bottle. So source is Indiana. Blending is done in Roselle, New Jersey. So that's where everything is created and blended and tweaked and poked. And then for scale purposes, the straight barrel strength, regular red, and actually just recently some of the toasted products, they're actually bottled for us in Kentucky. So Bardstown Bourbon Company, we actually use their spare capacity on their lines. So they're not bottling every day, but they're actually giving us fast capacity to bottle. So we can usually do the run within 1 to 2 days, and then bring it to our warehouse. We actually got a new warehouse recently. So we're actually moving into a 13,000 square foot warehouse, which when you're going from about 3,000 square feet to 13,000 square feet, it's a lot of fun. You got a lot of places to put stuff, and we kind of need it right now. So I think that warehouse will probably give us about 2 years of operation, and then we'll be out of space again. So that's where we're going to. So did I say Valencia next? Yeah, I think I did, right?
As you reach for the Valencia and we get people to pull it out, I do want to take a second and get everyone to do the toast before people jump off. So pour yourself a little Valencia, turn on your camera, get Shane and Jason and Ian and John and whatever the underscore is. There we go. Getting some lovely faces in here. I'm going to do the function. All right. So thank you for being here. Cheers to you. Cheers to everyone. Jason, raise a glass. Everyone raise a glass and smile to the camera. Got it. It's a beautiful shot.
Good job with changing my glass. So Valencia, town in Spain, but it's all about Cleveland. out of interest. Yeah, actually, Kimpton, Cleveland, Ohio, is the infamous spot. Actually, that is where me and Danny got the opportunity. I was actually traveling with Danny at the time, and he needed to taste some of these samples before he did the final blend. So we actually had the samples sent on the road, and both of us sat in the Kimpton, Cleveland at midnight, getting some very strange looks from people as we sat in the reception going through all of these samples. But that is part of the story about Valencia. But I'll go back in time. Vino de Naranja cask, so orange Spanish wine, is the original. This is the secondary cask that we're using here for the finish. It's a very dense, it's almost black, dark looking, sort of dessert wine. Actually, it's a very tannic orange, but got some sweetness in it. It's almost like a port, like it's orange port wine. It's very, very viscous, very deep, dark flavors that are in it. Very traditional Spanish dessert wine, not so common in the US, but there are some bottles that you can procure of it. Otherwise known on most labels as VDN, we decided not to do that. We call it Valencia oranges. It's a little bit easier to understand. The bottle, if you ever
When you
see
call
it,
it Valencia oranges, my first thought was that it was California oranges from
oh,
Valencia.
there you go. Yeah, Valencia, Spain. That's where the cask came from. We actually even put oranges on the etching in this particular glass. So we do that from time to time. We'll actually etch instead of the flower. So on our regular bottles, it's a peony flower. Mike's wife, Carrie, helped design and choose that with Mike. So that's kind of cool as well as a little motif to the start. But the peony is our typical etched motif. But yeah, some of these cast finishes, we play around with that etching a little bit, do some subtle things with it.
That's gotta add a lot of time to the bottles, no? Like to produce them.
Yeah,
Etching each bottle?
we have to give it about 6 months.
Wow.
That's kind of the lead time on the etching. Yeah, the etching's pretty interesting. It's a print that's put to the bottle, but yeah, it does add a little bit of time. We have to buy glass in giant container after container after container. So the pandemic taught us very well that just buy more than you need, and typically 2.5 times more than you need, because with the supply chain, it's been taking a little longer to get certain things through customs and trucks and crates and all that kind of good stuff. So logistically, Danny and the team have done a phenomenal job, because there's not been one point since the pandemic and even today where we never had a bottle issue, we never had a label issue, never had a cap issue. We could always still produce. So yeah, the hats off to the guys and girls for doing that. So Valencia, this is actually 2 blends. Blend 1 of the 4 grain, so we're on a 4 grain here still, went into barrel for 7 months. Blend 2 was a little longer, somewhere up in the 13s, maybe 14s. So averages out about 12 when we blend them both together. We're very transparent. The first time that we pulled this, we didn't like it at all. In fact, we got a little worried, if I'm honest. We pulled it at about 6 months, and it just was not ready to go. So we put it back, put them all away, let them sit there for longer. We dropped some additional barrels as a little bit of a backup, but also to help us if we did have an issue with the longer barrels from a blending perspective. There's something really cool about this. And when I first tasted this, you can have a pre-notion about a finished bourbon, right? And when Danny's explaining to me, it's a 4 grain, I've used the orange wine cask as the secondary cask. In my mind, I'm getting this like crazy orange experience. And what I learned very quickly about I got to taste obviously the original source wine, is I knew that it wasn't going to be that way. And I got pretty excited when this product finally got blended, because to me personally, a finished bourbon should be the bourbon at the front and you get the finish at the back. That's how my brain thinks about it. That's not to everybody's taste, but what I love about this is that you are going to get such a beautiful mandarin citrus orange peel right at the back of this pour, and it lingers. So please take a little sip on it. I went through a bottle of this pretty quickly. I'll be honest. It's like, to me, you could be 1 or 2 bitters away from a really good Manhattan or old fashioned. Like it's got that makeup to it where it's not telling you it's a cocktail in a bottle, because that would be a little bit unfair to the original blend of this, but it's pretty darn close. I like the creaminess at the front of this. I'm getting my bourbon experience, but then it just builds into the heat a little bit. But I just love that orange peel back there. It's just, it's very subtle. And by the way, we're going to run this again next year. So we already made that decision because we enjoyed this so much. We may do the barreling a little bit differently next time we do it, but this is pretty unique. Typically, like most of the folks that we've seen do these VDN casks, typically drop them about 6 months. We're going to leave the next one probably a little longer, actually. But yeah, the time is critical on this particular one. In fact, it mirrors something we learned. We have a rosé finished bourbon. By the way, batch 5 is just dropped, so it is actually coming out. We just started shipping it. Well, we learned something very critical with those barrels is that you do have to give them some time, because the rosé cast finish, it's using 100% Grenache barrels. And it's a very different process, because typically a rosé is tank finished with the skins and of the grape. There's about 2 to 3 wineries in France that actually do barrel aged rosé. Very rare. There's not too many of them. It's actually kind of an expensive process. So we actually bring those French oak barrels back to the US, and then we put in our 4 grain. 6-7 months it will sit in there. We don't have many of those barrels, but we will next year, because we are launching a new brand. It's going to be called Lila and Kennedy. We are going to be doing our own barrel-aged rosé wine. And the simple reason for that is we learned pretty fast is you need to own your own supply chain, especially if you're going to do these really cool cast finishes. So it actually allows us to increase the number of rosé Grenache barrels that we have, French oak barrels, so that we can actually do more of the rosé bourbon. So we're going to keep that one a little bit more of a consistent flow next year, because typically we only do the rosé once a year. These LTOs, these limited time offerings, like the Valencia, it's only once for this year. We'll do it once next year. Been a fun product to do. It's really cool experimenting with the wine series. There are other wine series things down the line. That's what I can say right now. But we're very fortunate. We got some really good cooperage partners. They've been able to source some really, really cool barrels from all over the world, and these barrels are not cheap. So the next one we're moving on to, like these Tokaji barrels are super expensive, and they're empty and they're really old. So we have to factor that in, because we're growing. We're relatively a young bourbon company, so you have to manage the cents and dollars, but also make sure you can produce something that's really cool. So that's why these are a bit limited. But I'm really glad you all got to try this. This has been really a neat project for us, and I guess started in Spain, blended in New Jersey, and finished up its life getting its final seal off in Cleveland, Ohio, as it were. So I hope you all enjoy this particular one. Ooh, actually, I like this idea. I want to try it over vanilla bean ice cream. Oh, yeah, I can see that a lot, actually. In fact, where I grew up at Christmas, we used to have this Christmas pudding. got a lot of dark fruits in it, dates, plums, like a cake format. I'd actually take a little bit of the Valencia. I actually throw it on top of it and then set it on fire, a little flambe to it. So that's probably what I'm going to do at Christmas. But the ice cream, I like that. It's really cool. Oh, okay, I like this. All right. Oh, someone's on the Tokyo already. Amazing. All right, cool. I was trying to win the award. They said there wasn't an award for, but that's kind of cool. So moving on. So Tokai Takaji, I think is the technical pronunciation of it. That actually has a little bit of a fascinating story, actually. So when we kicked off this project, we actually saw the sweet wine barrel. It's Hungarian, a little larger format than a traditional American oak barrel. Very old, very heavy. Takes up a lot of these barrels take up a lot of space, actually, and a lot of juice too. So we had the barrels, and by fortune's stamp, actually, there was a bourbon company that was struggling to find barrels. And that is, just so you all know, a very common theme throughout the industry right now. So there's a lack of new fill barrels, going to cooperages and buying them. It's a very long wait list. There's also, from a sourcing perspective, barrels are very expensive. You can find them, but it depends on how much you want to pay for them. So we were in a position where actually we had spare capacity of our barrels that we have made for us. And there was a set of folks who they have a farm in Vermont in the northern part of the country, who were looking to procure some oak barrels. They were short. So in return, they actually had some MGP in their warehouses. And this is the interesting thing. So MGP doesn't just sit in Indiana. People buy MGP juice all over the world. That's what MGP is known for, is that they produce, distill it, put it in some barrels, and they sell it to people. They have their own product lines as well. Obviously, they own Luxro now, and I think they just changed the name recently for some of their products to Ross and Squibb. That's where they're heading with some of that. But they contract distill for people. That's what MGP does. So lots of different bourbon brands will procure MGP product. The rye that you have in that Tokai was actually part aged in upstate New York. And what makes that a little special is that time that it spent in that different location and that environment really set that apart from what we've tasted a lot of 95.5 MGP juice, and it gave it this beautiful earthy funk to it. And alone, it was beautiful. But then we're like, well, we got the Tokai barrels. Let's see what it marries up to. You got this nice funk, you got this earthiness, you got this rye, there's some mint going on this thing, some herbal notes. There was a little thyme, a little clove going on in the original 95.5 barrels. So we married it with this sweet wine barrel. It's a 6-year juice in this particular one. The 95.5 was 6-year, and it sat in barrel 6-7 months on average. And it is such a unique pour. And I noticed that someone said there's a little pine note in there, and I agree with that 100%. And there's going to be some minerality into that. This Hungarian sweet wine actually does have a little bit of a sharp note to it as well. So the minerality is probably going to come from that side of it. The key thing with these barrels is that when you procure them, you need to get them to your facility in a reasonable amount of time. Semi-wet to somewhat wet is a good thing. If they dry out, you've just wasted a whole lot of money. They're dead. You cannot recharge these things. So you have to kind of be very careful with when you're procuring barrels, where they're coming from. What's been in them is also good to know, because like with the rosé cast, we always want to maintain the fact that it's true to 100% Grenache. A lot of rosé can be mixed grape. So you have to kind of really research these barrels, where they've been, who was using them. the age of them. Do they leak? Some barrels leak a lot. That's just juice and money rolling out. But no, this is a beautiful pour. It was our first rye, and actually the reason we finished it is that we're known a little bit for the finishes, but we wanted to create something that was a gateway for folks, and I think we did it with this. So when we first put this out and had people try it, we actually gave it to some folks that originally said, I don't like rye, not into rye, never going to try rye. And they try this and we're like, hey, what do you think? And they're like, is this rye? And we're like, yeah, it's rye, but you've got this additional finish to it that kind of gateways a 95.5 rye with a very sort of delicate finish to it. So yeah, that's the little history on we got a poll too. Did I answer the poll too? What was my favorite poll?
Yeah, of course.
No, but please, I'd love to know what you all think. But that's the story of the Tokai Takaji, call it whatever you want. This was 107 proof, yeah, mainly 107 proof. There was some cast strength versions of this that we did for some barrels, store barrels, and might be a little bit more of it next year. Never know. So these last two are a little bit harder to find. Thank you to the donation of the bottle for you guys. That was pretty awesome. Yeah, so I'm kind of keen to see what everyone thought for tonight. I know what I'm picking. So I should pick all of them because I love all of our children. That's what I should say. Yeah. So yeah, that's a little walkthrough of who we are and what we do, and I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to me for the last hour and a half. If not, I apologize, but hopefully the accent made up for it.
No, we definitely did. So you said we should look out for some single cask releases and the rosé. Anything else?
So I'll run through what's going on. Yeah, of course. Rosé batch 5 is shipping right now, and I'm not sure what all states everyone's in, but if you've got any particular questions on states and stuff, I can answer that. We are opening new markets next year. We are going to do some toasted rye next year. That's in the roadmap. It's not fully committed yet, but it's all to do with the barrel types and the juice and time. We have a pretty exciting cast finish coming in February. Really exciting, actually. Yeah, it's got a little how should I say this without giving it away? Southern continent flair. That's gonna be fun, and then we're actually really excited about that. We've tasted the this kind of, to give you an idea of what's going on with that particular, there should be 2 barrel finishes, so a little clue on that. More barrel strength releases. We're going to do some architect releases. Oh, we have a 10-year coming out next year. So the cool thing about the 10-year, it's going to be a wheat. So it's a 10-year MGP wheater. These are actually the barrels were dropped actually about around the time when Greg Metz worked at MGP, who, if you know that name, is now at Master Distiller Old Elk. So that's fun. So they'll be out middle of the year. We're actually going to do that on our anniversary, I think, of the 4 or 5 year anniversary at that point. 4 years, yeah. What else we got coming out? Oh, we got a couple other tricks up our sleeve. Nothing much we can say right now, but yeah, Toast is going to be a fun product. Some private selects probably at some point. Yeah, it's going to be a fun year next year. Lots of cool things.
I see a question from Jane. Jane, you want to ask that?
I was just curious. Once you get into barrel aging the rosé wine, are you actually going to release the wine, or are you just using it to age the barrel so you can play with whiskey?
No, we're actually going to release the wine. It's going to be yeah, no, it's going to be called Lila and Kennedy. We've kept it as a different brand, and Lila and Kennedy is Danny's newborn twin daughters.
Nice.
Yeah. No, it's cool. It'll have the same kind of look and feel. We're using our wine. We actually use like almost a wine bottle for the whiskey anyway. But yeah, no, it's going to have a really cool design on it. And the plan with it is we're going to release the wine with the next batch of rosé right together. So it's kind of like you get the wine, and then you can try the bourbon afterwards.
Perfect. I'm in.
Me too. I'm excited. The samps are really good on it. It's very, very beautiful. It's very delicate, a little bit of sweetness to it. Yeah, we're going through a whole blending process with that. I can't remember if Danny decided he's going to do some of the barrel aging in France or if we're doing some of it here, but there's a whole process that he's working out right now. And we have to get glass to France pretty quickly because they're going to start their bottling rosé season pretty soon. So yeah, I think around April, May timeframe, I think you'll see the rosé wine come out
Awesome.
at an affordable price too.
Well, that just
Even
makes
better.
me happier. Now
Yeah, I know. Wine and whiskey, right? Who couldn't want more than that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
You miss any
everyone, it
other
looks
questions?
like just about everyone voted. Do you want to take a guess of what the winner was tonight for favorite pour of the night?
It's hard. There's so many good ones in here, and there's a little bit for everybody. I don't know. I don't want to guess because I like them all.
Okay. Well, what do you think we liked? Pick one.
I'm gonna go with a toasted or a barrel strength.
All right. Locked in. I'm not going to torture you anymore. The winner is the Architect. 44% voted for Architect.
Oh, that's awesome. Love that.
Yep.
So a little bit of lower proof with the oak in there. I like that. All right. Awesome.
The Architect took first place, Tokai took second, and Barrel
Wow.
Strength took third.
All right,
Tied
so we should
with
do some more
Valencia.
Tokai and keep the Architect going. All right, cool. Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Love it.
You have some spotty distribution in California. I know you're in California, but not all the stores carry it. Do you know what's up with that?
Yeah. So we're not actually really technically in California. We are from a legal perspective, so we have our permits in the states. So we actually use an online distributor. So they're called LibDib. They're actually a big distribution partner, but their model is online. And there's actually a philosophy why we went this route. So there are massive bourbon markets in North America, number one being Texas. Okay. 2 and 3, they jostle around between California, Florida, New Jersey, North Carolina. That's kind of gets as you go through the different states. So when you're starting out, you've only got X amount of capacity, X amount of barrels, and you're going to kind of pick and choose where you distribute. And of course, distribution into states, I mean, you got to basically every state is its own country in terms of the liquor laws. They're all different. They all have their own different uniqueness and rules and what you can and what you can't do. Some are franchise states, some are open states, some are controlled states. So you got to learn all those rules. It really came down to the capacity we had, but also the amount of consumption that takes place in California. So we went with the online model. It still gave those retailers that we're using or had the ability to use an online retail through LibDib to actually obtain the product. And the other reason that we use LibDib and also California is that there's actually a lot of online retailers that actually, until the law changed a little bit, they were sending product out to different states because California had that ability. So it gave us a bit more of an online presence as well. So the good news is we are currently trying to figure out what we are going to do for next year. So it should improve. That's
so real quick. Is there a way for those of us that love Penelope to get it a little easier in California? Would it be talking to our local shops about it or using this online distributor? And could you spell that online distributor, please?
Of course. So a couple of things to your question. So absolutely. So if you have a favorite store and they are good with setting up an online account, it's called LIBDIB. That is the distributor. interestingly, one of the investors, I'm not sure how much stake they have, but they have a partnership with RNDC. So that's kind of they're actually a technology company, true by heart, but they have the ability to distribute. They're a full distributor. We actually have a list. I could probably get that sent out to you, Vadim, of like all the retailers. We have about 12 to 14 different retailers in California. But there's we can't show favoritism to any of them, so we have to make sure that the full list is available. It's part of, you have to be very clear with that. But yeah, absolutely. So if you have a favorite liquor store and they can set up, it's actually very easy to set up. And then the products we have products in a warehouse in California actually sits there. So there's plenty there. There's Toasted, Architect, Barrel Strength, and 4-grain, and rosé actually. So lots of ways to do it. Online sites, there's a number of online sites throughout the country that can ship to California, and those typically carry all of our products as well. So there are plenty of ways to procure your Penelope needs. Yes, that's a very good one. Wine Searcher is a good website. There are other great websites out there too.
I'm just going back to the beginning, and I am just so thrilled with the bourbon, just the basic 40%. It's so lovely. It's soft. It's really nice. And I can just see drinking this just for whatever.
Yeah, like it's honestly like you don't need to think about it. It's just it just does its job pretty well. It's giving you that nice, just a little bit around of everything. Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. It's
really
one of our top. It's one of our most. It's the one we sell the most of, actually.
That makes sense. It's just amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
It's funny. I just went back to the Toasted just because it was the one I had. I'm only pouring partial, and it was the one I had the least amount of left. I'm like, well, I just need to finish that off. And I'm going back to the nose, and the toasted marshmallow is just like, it's getting to me, and I'm right back to it. I love it. I love that nose. That nose is fantastic.
It's campfire. It's everything you want to do outdoors when it's cold. Chocolate marshmallows on a stick with a little bit of burnt sugar thrown in for fun.
Well, that makes sense, being in Minnesota, and it's about 7 degrees outside right now. So it makes sense that I'm looking for the warmth.
Yeah, actually, so Minnesota, we just started selling the product there a few weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw it in the chat, but like the Minnesota whiskey sites that I'm on, everybody just went completely ballistic, and it was frightening on the sites for a little bit of time. And there's still some spots out there that have plenty of the stuff. So it's kind of interesting that I made the comment that this is one of the rare moments I feel like I might have more access to something than everybody else in the group does.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you guys are going to figure out how to get your Penelope.
We have our ways.
I'm sure so. No, it's opening up distribution is, it takes a lot. It's about a 6 to 7 months process. You have to permit with the state, depending on the rules. Distribution has to be set up because obviously we have to be within the 3-tier system. And our particular license actually in New Jersey actually doesn't allow us to have a tasting room, and we can't sell direct to anybody, not even consumer. So our actual website is actually fulfilled through a third-party fulfillment process, and they actually use retailers. So they use a system of retailers across the whole country to get those bottles from our website. So that's because of the different rules in New Jersey. A little bit constrained, but the little engine that could, we get on with it and make it happen. So yeah, we're looking at quite a number of different new states next year. It's just a process. There's a list that we have, and we have to go through and look at the cost to the consumer, because whilst we can't dictate price. So, the price you see on the shelf, that's the retailer, and they were buying that from the distributor at a particular price, and dependent on the rules in the state, certain states they'll have defined pricing structures and some won't. So we're always set in terms of what we deliver it to, but we actually can't set the price of the retail shelf. It's actually not something we can do. So we're in the hands of everybody else, which can be fun.
And to touch base on your the toasted again. Sorry, I keep going back to it.
Sure.
It looks like it's all single casks and a cask strength, and then they're all just different, right? So you can find a bunch of different toasted expressions.
Yeah. So typically a couple of things happen. So we have a barrel program for the retailers. They will select on a single barrel. But we, obviously a barrel is a certain volume. So when we're doing the secondary cast, we will take a number of those and then we will blend a batch together. So it kind of comes back to the tank and then it will get blended into that particular batch. But they'll be of the same, basically the same drop date within, a few weeks, but they'll be of the same char and toast level, because you got to maintain your rough consistency of what you're using on the barrel side. So that allows us to do a couple things. We can do some single barrels and we do some batch blends. Yeah, that's
the one we tried today was heavily toasted. I think it was a char 3.
3 heavy. Yeah, you're right in the middle point of char and you're right at the top end of the toast levels. So it's kind of the middle ground. Char 5 heavies, they get a little fun. I like the lower char and the heavy toast. That's where I'm at for me.
It was very good. I like the toasted a lot. I thought it was very tasty.
Actually, there's a fun thing you can do with the red label barrel strength. If you like cocktails, do a bramble. The barrel strength works really well with crushed ice and making like red berry bramble, or doing something like that. Or if you want to get more adventurous, make like get gunpowder tea, make a gunpowder tea syrup, play around with teas, make some syrups and do some cocktails with the barrel strength of that. It's actually really, really cool. Actually, sometimes in our barrel strength get a little bit of the black tea note, and I'm a tea drinker, so obviously I'm British, so we were born with like tea, like literally out of the birth. You're like, oh, I have a cup of tea. So that's always fun. You can do a lot of cool things with the barrel strength, the regular barrel strength in cocktails as well as the 80 proof.
So what a bramble is, just a whiskey sour with a berry liqueur instead of simple syrup, right?
Yes,
or
sir.
along.
Yeah,
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, you can do variations of it. I actually I play around with a lot of these. I did a hibiscus syrup and almost did like it was kind of like I call it the Red Devils, but I was using the bourbon or hibiscus syrup in it, some sweet and sour and all kinds of different things in there.
Yeah, Jane and I just split a bottle of creme de mure. It's specifically for brambles.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah, a little barrel strength action in there. It's a little spice to the day.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I hope everyone had fun.
Yeah, this was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Matt. I'm glad we can get you together. Fun fact, when Jordan mentioned that we were in Kentucky drinking or tasting Penelope, I don't know if Jordan, if you remember, Matt was actually the one pouring it for us.
Oh, yeah, most likely if it was the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But, that's
this has been really great. Thank you so much, Matt. I'm glad we can get you out here. I hope you had a good vacation last week. And
I did.
You did, and you're doing well after all those hurricanes and tornadoes out there.
Yeah, it was just it's been a weird season for that here. The one came from the West Coast. I'm actually more on the East Coast side. It was slightly annoying because the first hurricane was just it was kind of between Cat 2, Cat 1 when it came over where I live. The eye came right over the house, and that was kind of weird. The backside of the storm actually is where we got most, as you normally will, these hurricanes, you get the worst. Literally the last 30 minutes of the storm, I lost my power for 4.5 days. And I was like pretty upset about that. The most recent one actually was actually worse because when the first storm came through, it actually damaged a lot of things and the coast got really badly eroded. Well, the second one that came in a month and a half ago wasn't as strong, but it was more destructive because it was already damage from the first one. So yeah, I lost a lot of things in that one, actually more so than the first one. But you know, catching up as we go along. It's the best
We
way
don't
to
have
put it.
hurricanes in California. Come over.
No, but you have earthquakes, so they scare me a little bit more than some wind, I'll be honest.
You know, I never
So,
thought I'd hear someone call a hurricane, especially a Cat 2, annoying and weird.
it is a little bit because you know, and this is not to joke about because you can't be complacent with any of those storms because you know tornadoes are with them and the rain, but the complacency of living here has got to the point where I think if it's not a 3 and above, most people have started to ignore it, which is actually a very bad thing. And in fact, that's really what part of the issue was in Sarasota. The storm hit lower than was expected. It moved the track, and these things are very unpredictable. So I know there's a big charity auction coming up. I don't know if you all saw it, but Unicorn Auctions teamed up with Fred Minnick. And actually some southern Florida bourbon groups. And yeah, we're actually we have a toasted barrel up for auction. So it's currently like just a little under 7,000. We did a barrel for the Kentucky Relief too. So we're always very charitable. We like giving back. It was a rosé barrel actually. It went for like $23,000. And yesterday I was actually in Louisville with the folks that bought the barrel for the charity auction. So we did the tasting last night, and it was pretty interesting because the folks that bought it was a whole group of them, but they're restaurateurs, and they knew people that were affected, so that's why they wanted to give back, which I thought was really cool. And yeah, it was humbling. In fact, Fred was telling us a little bit about the funds that were raised for that went to all people, all levels of issues, and actually helped pay for some funerals as well for people that couldn't afford it, which, you know, it's tough. So we got the toasted barrel. It's up there at Unicorn Auctions. So we're hoping to do the same thing for Southern Florida because they're hurting down there still. You know, it'll be years. In fact, it may be more than years to get that back. I mean, I live quite near Daytona Beach, and that got very badly damaged with New Smyrna, actually. Houses just went in the ocean. It's as simple as that. They got eroded and they went in there. So, yeah, tough, but we're getting there. Wouldn't be Florida without a little bit of action, I guess.
Yeah, everybody always laughs and makes fun of California going into the ocean to go hang out with Hawaii. I guess you guys are beating us to it.
Yeah, we might be. Yeah, we're roding pretty fast out this way. But yeah, no, I actually spent part of my life living in San Jose, actually,
Nice.
in the Silicon Valley area. So yeah, I've lived out there for a little bit. It's fun, nice place, very nice. I actually like getting down to Hermosa Beach. That's one of my places. I like going down there.
Yeah, it's real nice.
Too expensive for me, but I
Too
like
expensive for
visiting.
everyone.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, no problem. Well, it's getting a little late here, but I'm happy to hang around if you guys want to chat and ask any more questions. It's not a problem. So
I think we're good. I think we're going to call it a night. I want to thank you so much for hanging out with us. Thank you so much,
course.
Matt. And hopefully in the future, if you guys have some new expressions, something fun coming out, we can do a round 2 and talk about the latest and greatest.
Yeah, no, we'd love to. There definitely should be a round 2 on this. Next year's a lot of fun. So, you know, won't leave it as long next time. Yeah, reach out to us if you have any questions. We're always open and happy to help you with anything you need.
Should we follow you on socials? I think you guys are pretty active on Instagram.
Yeah, so
Penelope Bourbon.
Yep, at Penelope Bourbon. We're actually we're on TikTok too. So we're on there.
I know Jane's a big TikToker, and so is Jason. So
yeah, no, we love interacting on TikTok. It's actually it's a lot of fun, and some cases does a little. It's a different audience, right? I mean, Instagram's good for the sort of the product side. People want a quick, soundbite of what's going on, but we love jumping on the live. In fact, we jump on lives and we go in the comments and we're always answering questions and stuff. So yeah, it's very interactive over on TikTok. We're on YouTube, I think, as well. And we're on Twitter. Sorry, we're on Twitter as well.
you're the last ones left on Twitter at this point.
Yeah, we're on Twitter. Yeah, so we're doing all of that kind of cool stuff in the social world. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Matt.
Yeah, no, of course, no problem at all. Well, thanks for your time, guys. Appreciate you.